Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's go over what is happening today, what we can expect moving into the final week of the year tomorrow, next week. And yeah, I'll give you my thoughts. So as usual, if you enjoyed, please don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts pretty much every single day. The market is open in my YouTube membership. That link is down below in the video at the top of the description. For just $3 a month, you can access all my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, mainly on Tesla stock, sometimes other stocks that I'll share as well, like AMD today, for instance. The other day I shared Walmart, etc. Again, just $3 a month or for $5 a month, you get access to everything I just said, plus NVIDIA daily updates if you're interested as well in that membership section. But jumping into a Tesla closing the day down, unfortunately, about 5% on the day, closing at $431.50 per share, we'll say, which compared to the market is going to be a little bit of an underperformance, of course. But, you know, we're in a pretty peculiar spot here on Tesla, right? We're definitely in a very peculiar spot. Now, let's go over what I personally believe is going to happen, and I'll give you my thoughts, obviously, overall moving forward. So we pretty much closed, you know, kind of right on the line, in my opinion, right? Right on the line, pretty much right at the bottom of the trend line. Now, we are barely holding on to it, but, you know, it's not the most convincing I guess hold you can say in the entire world over here based on this close right now. Now, you know, again, we came down to the low of the day, which was somewhere around this kind of, you know, 426-ish range. Like I said, that 425 to about the 430-ish range is very, very important. And, you know, we held it. So we are still holding that crucial level. But, you know, I would like to see a little bit more strength in this, right? We're not seeing as much strength as some of the other stocks that are recovering, like AMD or NVIDIA, rather. You can see a decent amount of candle recovery. AMD actually pretty much closed green even, which is nice. You know, Netflix, you know, a bit more candle recovery there. Even Meta, nice little, you know, recovery on the candle there, right? So Tesla definitely, you know, showing a little bit of weakness here, right? Not seeing the recovery that most of the other stocks, you know, the mega cap stocks are pretty much seeing for the most part. So that's the part I'm not, you know, happy about, right? Which is why this close to me is, yeah, I can't say it's convincing. I'll be completely honest. It's not the most convincing close, but we're still holding. So let's assume we hold, right? I'd want to see a gap up, honestly. I'd want to see a gap up on Monday, somewhere to around, I mean, it would be pretty decent gap up, to be completely honest with you. But I definitely would ideally want to see a gap up that would be about a, you know, 1% or so gap up on Monday. I don't know if we'll get it or not, but that would be the ideal scenario and a little bit more convincing in my opinion. Because if we don't get a gap up, we start the next day, let's say flat, for instance, right? We start the next day technically below the channel. And then, you know, there is a chance that we move up to about, you know, mid to high 430s and potentially turn into a resistance. And that can spell trouble. And that can potentially make us start this kind of transition to this move to the downside, which, you know, obviously wouldn't be ideal for the bulls. And that's obviously what the bears want to see. So that's why, again, not the most convincing close. Now, we are still ultimately holding this cloud, but this is I think, third time now we are essentially closing below the 9 EMA, right? The 9 EMA, of course, is the top of the cloud. We did it once here, which then gapped up and continued higher. Great. We did it here, which then we also gapped higher, and then we continued higher. Great. And now we're doing it again, which is why I said I want to see a gap up of about 1% on Monday. That will be a little bit more convincing. If we don't see that, and especially if we see a gap down, you know, this really starts running the risk of the correction being a lot steeper than this, right? And, you know, my target of the 360s roughly becomes, you know, very realistic, to be completely honest with you. And, you know, if it does happen and if it does occur and if we start getting this bearish, you know, pattern potentially started, I believe that this correction can be very quick and fast and aggressive, personally, as of right now. That's what I believe. Obviously, who knows? So in other words, the bulls, they want to see a gap up. They really, really want to see a gap up, or at the very least, very, you know, nice strength within like the first 15 or so minutes of market open on Monday, assuming we open relatively flat. Now, assuming we get the gap up, or, you know, we show that early morning strength on Monday and we do push up higher and, you know, break past the mid 430s roughly, which is where the bulls want to continue holding. You know, of course, the main level to break is going to be pretty much the 460s. That'll be the next major resistance point, right? The 460s definitely want to go ahead and break. You know, we want to essentially turn this area back into support, which will be very good for the bulls. And if we can do that, the next target will be all-time high sitting at about 490, and a break above that will it should essentially lead us to an ultimate move higher sometime in early to mid-January, you know, pretty, you know, generously into the 500s, honestly, generously into the 500s. So that's my overall upside perspective right now on Tesla, assuming, of course, we hold, you know, the mid 430s on Monday, ideally, honestly, right? Now, like I said, if we don't, and if we do not hold the 430s, I do believe ultimately, at the very least, will come down to 415 or so. You know, that would be good, obviously. But I ultimately, you know, would expect that a move back down to the 360s would be pretty much where, you know, the main target for Tesla. So that's probably the main way I'd look at it. Now, let's say, something really bad happens, right? We talked about bull cases and we talked about the very bullish case, which is all the way 1 to the 500s. But what if things just happen to really go bad? Like, what if things just really go wrong? Like, this really just does not go well at all anymore, and some aggressive selling pressure occurs, which, there is a chance, and I'll show you why, right? And let's just say things really go wrong. Like, man, this really gets ugly really fast. This is like the true bear case, if you will. I still think that, we will get a very aggressive sell-off down to somewhere around here, the 460 or 360s roughly. Could get a balance back up to 415. And then there's a chance we make our way ultimately well down even lower, back into the high 300 or low 300s to the potentially high 200s. That to me is like the bearish case. Like, that is like true bear case, right? Not impossible, right? We technically still never retested this overall breakout that we had, this massive breakout. We never actually ever came back down to retest that. And that would essentially cause that to happen. And don't forget, we are in a very steep rising channel. Now, obviously, while we're within it, it's naturally still considered to be bullish. But usually if you lose a very steep rising channel like this, the move to the downside can be pretty aggressive as well and pretty painful. So again, that's just my ultra bear case, right? I want to go over each of the theses and whatnot, right? We all went over the bull case and the more ultra bull case, which is well into the 500s if we break pretty much all-time highs. And then the bear case is 360s roughly, to the ultra bear case being the very low 300s to potentially even the mid to high 200s. That to me is like the ultra bear case. So those are the main things I'll be looking at moving forward on Tesla. Now, why did I say that, the ultra bear case is not something you should completely ignore, right? Why is that something that, has potentially some merit to it, right? Well, let's go over that. Well, if I go to the weekly chart, now again, this is when I bring up my bands. We are still really far away, even from the 9 and 21 EMA band on the weekly time frame, right? We're still very, very far away. So even if we do get that bear case, if you will, scenario happen, which I mentioned around 360s, all that's going to do is on the weekly move us back right into that cloud, which could be pretty fine. That could be all she wrote. That's pretty much all we know, the only quote unquote correction we get, and we potentially get a pretty powerful bounce from there. That absolutely can still be the case. But the ultra bear case will be pretty much the weekly, which is extremely far away from the market bias, pretty much moving back down to the market bias, which, if that were to happen over the next few weeks or so, that could easily spell $270 per share again, which sounds ludicrous, right? We're at $430 per share, 270? No way, right? I'm sure everyone's thinking that that's impossible. And it is obviously pretty aggressive, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is my, base case or anything like that. But if we were to, produce a bearish, like an actual true bearish case, this would be that true bearish case. Very aggressive move to the downside, over 30% drop in price. Well, back to the market bias on the weekly, because again, you have to remember, market bias almost acts like a mean reversion type scenario where, whenever we're too far away from the market bias, we usually snap back up to it. For instance, again, we were really far away up here, and what do? We snapped it back right to it. We were really far away up here and we snapped back to it. We were really far down here, snapped back to it. Really far down here, and ultimately we snap back to it, right? Same here, same here. Ultimately you can almost view this market bias as kind of like, a mean reversion type thing, I guess, if you will. Whenever you're too far away from it, there's a damn good chance that obviously it plays catch up to us naturally, but ultimately the stock and the market bias meet somewhere more or less in the middle. So keep that in mind, right? And as if that's not enough, of course, if I bring out the other bands, like for instance, the Bollinger Bands, we're still hugging on the weekly time frame, the upper part of the Bollinger Band, which again, also doesn't happen very often without at least some correction not too long after. That's why for me personally, despite we're still technically within this, rising channel on the daily, though barely, I'm very cautious with Tesla, at least the way I'm personally trading here, mainly because, it is extremely overextended. And I personally do believe that this party at some point will end. I know everyone's very bullish. Everyone thinks Tesla's going well into the 500s, and it still can. It still can. We went over that bullish thesis. But when I see a stock like Tesla, which historically has, of course, had many instances where it would hug at the top end of the Bollinger Bands like this and get very far away from market bias on the weekly time frame, and for quite a while, honestly, longer than you would think, which of course can still give us that 500s, right? Because we can still potentially continue hugging it, kind of like what we did over here, right? We hugged it for quite some time before we finally got that pretty aggressive sell-off. We can still get that, absolutely. But if we lose that rising channel on the daily, to me that really puts worry into that bullish thesis. So let's see. We need to see how Monday plays out. I want to see how we continue holding this potential, rising channel on the daily chart on Monday, and if we can continue holding it and essentially recapturing it, or if we pretty much lose it, and then things can get pretty ugly from there. So that's probably the main way I'm looking at Tesla right now moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go over to the options flow on Cheddar Flow on Tesla, which, by the way, Cheddar Flow, link down below if you're interested. Very great option service. with the discount code if you use it as well. The bulls are still looking for more upside. I mean, the bears, you know, they're not giving up here. You can see the bears are definitely not giving up. But the bulls, for instance, they had a 2 million call come in for the 4/17/2025, 600 strike. That's pretty bullish, actually. I like to see that. So the bulls are not done yet, man. It seems like they think that we will continue holding this channel and we will make our way into the 500s. Let's see if that actually happens. I'm going to let the chart decide for me. And right now, based on this close, I'm not convinced in either direction. I'm not necessarily bearish here, but I'm not necessarily bullish here. I need to see a bit more information before I get really more convinced, mainly because we're pretty much just more or less right on that kind of thin ice line, if you will, where it feels like it can drop and go almost any direction, right? So I need to see it continue holding around this area. And I want to see a bit more strength, at least on Monday, right? Again, like I said, you know, compared to like NVIDIA, AMD, Netflix, even Google slightly, but especially like, you know, Meta, even Amazon, Microsoft, right? Apple, pretty much all the Mag 7 stocks have shown that strength and had shown some recovery, you know, throughout the day. While Tesla, you know, the wick at the bottom is not very high, not very long, I should say. Not really showing the same recovery, which is why I'm not as convinced here. I need to see a bit more personally. But I gave you my levels. I gave you the upside and the downside targets. So let's see how Monday, you know, pans out, and let's see what we can expect from that. In terms of confirmed a bullish or bearish flow, Tesla is unfortunately confirmed 17 million bearish flow. So take that, you know, as you will. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on Monday. Peace.